August 1823. The Grand River, in what is now South Dakota. A man is walking ahead of his party, scouting for game. His name is Hugh Glass. He is somewhere past 40, which in this trade makes him an old man. He pushes into a thicket of berry bushes, and he walks straight into a grizzly sow with 2 cubs. What happens next takes less than a minute. When his companions reach him, he is torn open from scalp to leg. They are certain he will die. So 2 of them are paid to stay with him until he does. One of them is a boy of 19 named Jim Bridger. They wait, then they lose their nerve. They take his rifle, his knife, and his flint, and they leave him in a shallow grave, still breathing. Hugh Glass does not die. He wakes with a broken leg and no weapon and no fire. He sets the bone himself. He lets maggots clean the rot out of his own back because they eat only the dead flesh. And then he starts to crawl. 200 miles. He eats berries. He eats roots. He drives wolves off a dead buffalo calf and takes the meat. 6 weeks later, he walks into Fort Kiowa. Alive. Hugh Glass is the famous one. Most of them were not. Most of them simply never came back. These were the mountain men. They worked the most dangerous job in America, and they lived by a set of rules nobody wrote down. These are 15 of them. Number 9 is the rule Hugh Glass broke. Number 8 was done in the open, with a needle and thread 500 miles from a doctor. And number 1 killed men who had meat in their hands and food in their bellies. Subscribe before we start. Number 15. Never go alone. The Lone Trapper is a story we tell ourselves. The real men moved in brigades. 20, 30, sometimes 100 men. A man alone could not hold a horse herd. He could not stand a watch and sleep at the same time. And if he broke a leg, that was the end of it. The wilderness does not kill the weak. It kills the isolated. Number 14. The rifle is your life. Keep the powder dry. Black powder is useless the moment it gets damp. Rain, river crossings, snowmelt, sweat, all of it could take a man's rifle out of the fight. So the powder horn was stoppered and greased and kept under the coat. The rifle was carried muzzle down in the wet. A wet rifle is a club, and a club is not much use against a grizzly. Number 13. The possibles bag never leaves your body. Everything a man needed to stay alive went in one small leather bag. Flint and steel, a knife, patches and lead, all thread, sinew, and a twist of tobacco. It hung across the chest, and it did not come off. Not to sleep. Not to swim a river. Because a man separated from his gear was already halfway dead. Horses run off, camps are raided, packs are lost in rivers. The only things you truly own are the things on your body. Number 12. Trade with the tribes. The men who fought them died. This is the rule the movies get wrong. The successful trappers married into tribes. They learned the languages. They learned the country from the people who already knew it. They traded for horses, for food, for safe passage. In June of 1823, an Ashley party was attacked on the Missouri. Around 14 men were killed in a single morning. The men who treated this country as an enemy did not last long in it. The ones who learned from it did. Number 11. Read the sign before you make camp. A camp was never chosen for comfort. It was chosen after the ground had been read. Fresh tracks, cold ash, cut stumps, bent grass that had not yet stood back up, horse droppings, and how dry they were. All of it told a man who had been here, how many, and how long ago. The trapper who could not read that ground was camping blind. Number 10. Never stand on a ridgeline. It is the simplest rule on this list, and the easiest to forget. A man on the crest of a ridge is a black cutout against the sky. He can be seen for miles. So they walked below the crest. They crossed skylines quickly, and they crossed them low. They built fires below the lip of a hill, never on top of it. Being unseen was not cowardice. It was arithmetic. Number 9. Never come between a sow grizzly and her cubs. This is the rule Hugh Glass broke, and he did not break it on purpose. He simply walked into a thicket, and she was in it. The grizzly was the single most feared animal on the plains. A full-grown bear could weigh 800 pounds. A ball from a muzzle-loading rifle often did not stop it, and a man had one shot. So the rule was to make noise, to stay out of thick brush, and to never, ever get between her and her young. Hugh Glass survived it, and became a legend for it. That is exactly how rare it was. Number 8. When the bear has you, your partner is the surgeon. That same autumn, a young trapper named Jedediah Smith was mauled by a grizzly. He was 24 years old. The bear tore his scalp and very nearly took his ear off his head. There was no doctor. There was no fort within reach. So a man named James Kleiman took a needle and thread and sewed it back on, in the open, on the ground, with no training whatsoever. Smith lived. He wore his hair long for the rest of his life. Out here, the difference between a wound and a death was the man standing next to you. Number 7. Cross the river wide, not narrow. Every instinct tells a man to cross where the river is narrow. That is where it will kill him. A narrow river is a deep river, and a fast one. The same water squeezed into half the space runs twice as hard. So they crossed at the wide places, where the river spread thin over gravel. They crossed at an angle, facing upstream, leaning into the current. They never tied themselves to the horse. Drowning killed more trappers than bears ever did. Number 6. Winter is the real enemy. Hole up before it comes. There is no trapping through a Rocky Mountain winter. The rivers freeze, the beavers stay under the ice, the horses cannot find grass. So the brigades went into winter camp before the snow closed the passes. They chose a sheltered river bottom with wood, water, and grass under the snow. They laid in meat, they repaired gear, they waited. The men who tried to work through the winter did not come out the other side. Number 5. The beaver was the money. This entire brutal trade existed for one animal. Beaver fur was pressed into felt, and felt was made into hats for gentlemen in London and New York. Men froze and drowned and starved for hats. The traps were set underwater, at the edge of the pond. A twig was smeared with castoreum, the beaver's own scent, to draw them in. A trapper waited in barefoot in freezing water day after day to set them. It ruined their legs and their joints for life. And in 1840, silk hats came into fashion, and the whole world ended. Number 4. Cache everything. A cache was a hidden hole in the ground, dug in a dry bank, lined with sticks and grass, and packed with furs and powder and food, then covered. And the earth carried away and dumped in the river. Every trace of the digging erased, because a man cannot carry a season of furs and still run from trouble. So he buried them, and he came back. The word cache is French. The trappers took it from the voyageurs. And a man who forgot exactly where he had buried a season's work had worked for nothing. Number 3. Fat is the prize, not the meat. This is the rule that separates the men who came home from the ones who did not. A modern man thinks meat is meat. The mountain men thought no such thing. They fought over the fat, the marrow, the organs. They gave the lean meat to the dogs. They cracked the bones and boiled them for the grease inside. They saved every drop of tallow like it was silver. A modern hunter throws away the very thing they were fighting for. And the reason why is the whole point of this video. Number 2. Pemmican, the single greatest survival food ever made on this continent. Dried lean meat, pounded to a powder, rendered fat, melted and poured over it. Roughly equal parts of each, sometimes berries mixed in, packed into a hide bag and sealed with more fat. It did not spoil. It did not freeze hard. It weighed almost nothing. A man could live on it for months. And here is the part that matters. Pemmican is not a meat food. It is a fat food that happens to contain meat. That is not a detail. That is the entire secret. Number 1. Rabbit starvation. This is the rule that killed them. Trappers were found dead in camps full of food. Meat hanging on the rack. Meat in the pot. Meat in their stomachs. And they had starved to death. The French-Canadian voyageurs had a name for it. Here is what was happening to them. Rabbit is almost pure protein and almost no fat. So is deer and elk in the late winter when the animals have burned off every ounce of theirs. The human body cannot run on protein alone. Digesting it burns through water and nutrients faster than the meat can replace them. The symptoms come in days, weakness, headaches, then it kills. And here is the cruelty of it. The hungrier a man got, the more lean meat he ate. And the more lean meat he ate, the faster he died. The men who knew this survived on fat and marrow and organs. The men who did not ate their fill and starved. The fur trade lasted barely 20 years. Then the beaver were gone, the hats changed, and the whole world these men built simply evaporated. Hugh Glass was killed years later on the Yellowstone. Jedediah Smith was killed on the Santa Fe Trail at 32. Jim Bridger, the boy who left Glass to die, lived to be an old man and became the most famous guide in the West. That is how this country was actually settled. Not by heroes, by men who knew the rules and mostly followed them, and by men who did not and are buried in places no one remembers. If you want more of what America used to know, subscribe. We are digging it back out one skill at a time.